had that sommelier on, I kind of thought of you because he had me try a Riesling of all things, which I was like,
delicious.
And he did not like Rieslings when he first tried it. And he had this kind of mental like block with with Rieslings, and I kind of did too because I never paid them much thought. Right. And it was sweeter than what I was used to, but it was like really good, especially after I came back around to it after drinking all these reds. So it was good getting some perspective from somebody who knows wine. And then, well, you and I have some good.
We drink wine all the time. The thing with wine is like taste palates. They develop and grow as you do more drinking and you taste more things. Because it's kind of funny. Everybody watched the movie Sideways and they all hate Merlot. Yeah. And then it kind of almost killed the industry back then. But yet at the end, what he's drinking, the bottle that he held so precious, is a Merlot.
Oh yeah.
So you're like, that's kind of interesting. But
and he loved Pinots too.
I'm not drinking Merlot. Great movie, but I think that palates when it comes to wine is like your friend says, you just have to taste them, and then from a Riesling you might go to Sancerre one day and you're gonna be like, oh my goodness, it's like, I hate to say it, that the more you drink the better it is, and it's funny because then when you go the other way, when you go upward, you enjoy it, but sometimes you can go back the other way and say, wow, that Tempranillo just off the barrel is just as good as anything else. So it's pretty interesting. Wine is an art, I think. So,
it's kind of cool how like it's just so very people are into food to a certain extent, but not it's like not like wine. It's and I never, I kind of knew what I liked. It's like art too. Right. I think it's like art, right?
It's an art.
It's like when you go into, a lot of people don't care about art. They just see something at like IKEA art in the art section or whatever. They buy it. It looks good, and if that's what they like, then that's fine. But then they start to either find something that gives them that appreciation for it, and then they just go down the rabbit hole and they're like, oh my goodness, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's what happens when your palate starts to get like, wow. This has happened with bourbon, right? So the bourbon of the old was, what you had in the back, it was very harsh, and now bourbon's elevated to another level, and people are discovering it, right? And so it's kind of interesting because I think it's going to happen in rum. Everybody, when people talk about rum,
and tequila too, right?
Tequila's already there. Yeah, you can see the high cristalinos and the añejos and things of that nature. But rum, when you say rum, everybody thinks, oh yeah, Captain Morgan and this, which is a great product. Don't get me wrong.
Spring break, baby.
I love Captain Morgan and Coke, but there is a moment where you can start elevating your rum and you drink it on the rocks or neat. So it's kind of like very interesting how people their palate develop, and then you look. One of the ones I enjoy is Presidente rum, and you would never mix that with anything. The green label is the one I say, but it comes with practice, right? Just like your art, you're a musician, right? So you can play one piano and say this is great, and then you have the skill level to walk into a grand piano that's been tuned and everything's perfect, and you go bling 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 2-3 notes, and you're like, man. Well, that's what happens with wines. People who drink wine consistently can open a bottle of wine, and sometimes when you open it, people say, "Oh, this wine is terrible," but you already know, no, this wine's been here 20 years sleeping. You got to let it wake up.
Yeah, give it an hour or two.
And you're like, wow, and you're like, wow. So it is an art. I do agree with that.
Yeah, like have you met my Uncle Ricky in Chicago?
I think
he did. During Passover they came.
That's right, they came over.
So he drinks.
Yeah, remember he mentioned Smirnoff.
He just drinks Smirnoff straight at night, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's a little too harsh for me.
Well, he challenged me. He called me. He goes, best blind taste tested, best vodka out there. I'm like, whatever. So, went out that day. This was a couple years ago. Went out that day, went to the liquor store and bought like 7 different. I bought 7 different. So I went out. I got Tito's. I got
Grey
Goose. I got, I think, Ciroc. I got Smirnoff, and then Kettle One, which I thought was my favorite, and a couple others. Kettle One ended up being one of my least favorites after we did the blind taste test. Tito's being my least favorite, I guess, because it's corn, I guess, right? Yeah. But Smirnoff was my second.
Yeah. Two things happen. One, what are you accustomed to, right? What did you grow up with flavor-wise? And the second part is exactly what you said. When you bottle it and you take the marketing out, that's why when we do our wine tastings at the hotel or at the restaurants, we never leave the label. We bag all blind. Yeah. Because exactly what happens, people come in with a perception rather than with a palate. Now, knowing that, you also have to understand that people do buy based on product, right? The recognition product. There's names like Camus and other wines that, they're okay from my level but they got the recognition. and they sell very well. So you can't be blinded to the fact that the public demand is there. So you have to buy that.
Yeah. There's that the marketing. I mean, or the supply and demand. Like I was talking about the sommelier about the Japanese whiskeys. You know, how they're just like elusive Japanese whiskeys, and they're good. But
Yamasaki 25. Try to get one of those.
That's what I'm saying. That's my buddy Phil's gonna laugh at this because like he called me out after. I was like I got friends who are like all up in this Japanese whiskey, and he's like, I was talking about him. Yeah. But I mean, don't get me wrong, it's good, but it's just that there's so little of it. It's hard to get.
I also think part of the whole magic of what happened is they weren't expecting this demand, right? So you remember you make these products were being made 20 years ago, 18 years ago. So they weren't thinking that the world was going to flip in 2-3 years after COVID and the demand was going to be that great. So anybody that's holding old whiskeys and old bourbons probably got till 2035 to try to, because then the new batch is going to come out, right? So it's going to be interesting how supply and demand and the world's getting. When you look at a country like China, where they used to not buy so much, now they're buying so much, they have more disposable income.
Right.
So that's challenging it. Hey, Russia, I mean, think about Russia, what they've done to the wine market and the whiskey markets and Scotch markets.
Right.
Products go over there and they're willing to pay just as much as Americans, if not even more.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the whiskey market here in the States, I got a buddy who's part of the Dallas Whiskey Club or whatever, and I mean, some of the stuff he's had me taste is just like unbelievable. Yeah, it's good. So that's
the bad part is your palate's gonna remember that, and then you're gonna be like, "What? I gotta pay $5,000 for a bottle?" And you're like, "I'm not doing that."
I know. Yeah, and there's some stuff that that's crazy price, but it's not as good as I think it's not worth this price. You know what I'm saying? So that comes to, it's like art a little bit too. It's like you might find something that's worth, like, if you can't appreciate Picasso, then no amount of money, you don't care if it's worth $2 million. Like, first of all, it's not worth it.
Exactly what you hit it right on the note. If you open a bottle of wine or bourbon that somebody doesn't value the taste of it, it's worthless to them. It doesn't matter if you have, like you said, $2 million Picasso. They know what it's worth, but they themselves can't value the product. So that's the difference. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So what are you doing at the Gaylord as far as your involvement in like getting the wines, figuring out what wines to get, and then also like you said, tasting them and deciding what restaurants get what wines, like what's your role in that sense?
So as I'm the director of food and beverage, right? Yeah. So the directors of food and beverage usually work with the wines, food and beverage of the entire hotel. So the logic is to put a strategic plan that allows for the mass individuals to enjoy it, right?
Right.
Every restaurant's unique. We have about 9 restaurants. So everyone's unique. You have a steakhouse, Italian, Mexican, a sports bar, and so forth. So when you build these wine lists, you always have a core, which is what we call the natural core of the whole company. You have to use those individuals, but then you can have a private select. You start looking at what your market is, right? So everybody knows that Tito's is a great demand in Texas, right? Yeah. I didn't know this when I got here. Historically, Crown Royal is a very big demand in Texas, and I had no clue about that until you start seeing why is this happening. My first couple of months in Texas, I realized that the demand was there, and it's because of the history of Texas, of the Canadians that came down.
Oh yeah,
during the old days, and
that's cool.
And so you kind of start seeing the connections. Of course, tequila's always been a play here due to the connections with Mexico. But food and beverage directors mainly manage the entire F&B operations from when we got to the service, the food, and the liquids and spirits. It's all one organized, like an organized painting, right? It can be chaos at times, and it usually is, right?
Yeah.
But I've been doing this now for almost 25 years with the Marriott and with the company, and then by myself. I think I've owned a restaurant or 2, so. It's been very interesting. Food and beverage is a very interesting job if you can deal with the complexities that come with it. You can plan it perfect. It's like a general who plans a perfect war plan, but then all of a sudden things come out of the blue from nowhere that you had no expectation. So how do you react to those kind of things? Yeah. How do we react to COVID as a food and beverage, right? Who could have told you that the whole entire industry was going to be rocked in a blink of a year?
Yeah, how'd that work? How'd that affect you guys?
Well, it affected all food and beverage. The major effect that I think happened to food and beverage, it changed the labor force, right? To me, it changed the labor force. The senior individuals who were working in the food and beverage, they didn't come back. They found an alternative way because we were closed for such a long time. Yeah. That a lot of restaurants changed their strategy. It killed a lot of mom and pop restaurants. That's why you saw a big wipeout in major cities, especially New York, Chicago. I think it's slowly starting to come back, but the labor issue is not gone away, and that's the biggest challenge for
the labor issue?
The labor. Yeah. The demand for individuals to work in restaurants is not there like it used to be, right? Your son, my son, they're not going to go wash dishes and start off in that industry. They're going to go work somewhere else. So you're starting to see that the demand of what you used to have before, where you can pickpocket and pick people here and try to get them, it's slowly fading away. So right now, the best thing we do is from a strategic plan for labor is hire attitude and train. Skilled individuals are not there like they used to be. You can still find a diamond here and there, but it's best to hire individuals that you can mold and train as they develop.
Do you think that COVID was the cause of that? Like why there's people who aren't driven to kind of do that, come in and work their way up kind of a thing? Or
I think what happened is the genie got out of the box, right? Everybody looked at a waiter and waitresses as, oh, they're just serving food, but they didn't really understand their whole dynamics of a waiter mentality or of individual. Most of them went through college. They do wait, everybody waits tables through college.
Yep.
So they have people skills, they had organization, they work well under pressure. So when you start adding all that together, you start to realize that these individuals are wanted by the workplace, and these are the type of individuals every work environment wants. They want individuals who are hardworking. I mean, you tell a waiter who goes from waiting tables to working for an insurance company that he's got the weekends off, he's going to love it, right? He's going to be like, oh my goodness. And they're driven. They're always driven individuals. So I think that woke up the entire aspect of them, and people were hiring them. They were in high demand.
Right.
So we saw an exodus of what we call people in the food and beverage industry move to other fields.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. Yeah. And also just a lot of ways you can go about you can make a living on your own now as an entrepreneur, you know, like with technology. And I don't know, I know a lot of people, and I don't know how prevalent it is, but I saw a lot of people who completely changed career paths during COVID, and I don't know, started an Etsy store, or, started, doing a hustle on the side and started working out for them. During like COVID, some people started selling those, those IV packs, those that became huge, and they're like, okay, well, let me just get into the medical sales side of things. So it, like you said, shifted the market, and it brought them somewhere else. And because their restaurants were closed for a while, in Texas, it wasn't too bad though. It was like 4 months, 2 months.
Texas was better off,
especially since the Gaylord had most of them. They're not just, there were a lot of bars, but there's restaurants connected, and the law was like, if you have a restaurant and a bar, you can still operate, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But even then, it's still cut down because people were scared to go out and all that stuff. So, and then the events that you guys do, right? That was another thing, right?
Well, events in the big groups, as you can tell, the government took some steps to control mass gatherings. So the minute you start controlling mass gatherings, you can't have those major events. But I think the hotels, the big hotels, did very well in making sure, assuring people that they were safe. They were doing their due diligence to make sure it operates. At the end of the day, this is not going to go away. It's going to continue, right? But it's how we manage it as a country and how we look forward. But you're absolutely right. When you grab a person a waiter or bartender who's historically known to hustle and work for their money and give it all, and you put them in a sales position in another area, that work ethic didn't go away. That work ethic is still there. They're still going to go out and get the job done. And so I think that's why we saw a lot of the shifting away. And it also retired some people. Some people realized that, COVID made a lot of, unfortunately, took a lot of lives. And some people are like, why am I doing this? I have enough money. And made us realize a little bit that not everything is money, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people realize, oh, listen, I can retire. What was it called? The great retirement phase that we went through. And so that's part of the history of our food and beverage. When you look back 20 years, this is going to probably be one of those impact areas that happened to our industry.
Yeah, for sure. Something that caused not just the restaurant, food and bev, man. It's
overall. It just took when you go to, like I said, when you go to the major cities and you see that the old restaurants are gone.
Yeah.
And I think F&B is evolving. When you look at the restaurants coming up, technology is going to be huge for our restaurants. You're starting to see things that probably, they say disasters cause for some great change and advancement. I think that's one of the things that happened with COVID for food and beverage. It just pushed us forward to technology, that things that we wouldn't have done are now being done.
Like the kiosk, the self-checkout, right? Like when you think about restaurants like that, even at like, we like to go to the steakhouse, what is it?
Roadhouse?
Yeah, Texas Roadhouse. And they have all the kiosks now. You don't pay, you don't give them your car, you just, and that's become like a big thing too.
Yeah, and airports. All the airports are starting to do that, where you can order from anywhere and just pay right at the minute, and they just bring it over.
Yeah.
Those are strategies that are going to happen. Menus are going to probably go into pads pretty soon, and you're going to be able to alter them at any time. And then when you run out of something, you don't have to go there and tell the table you're out of something. It just automatically will do it. As things get economically cheaper from the sense of technology, you're going to see a lot of these changes. Now, I personally think you're going to have two things happen. You're still going to have some of the old school type of restaurants with great service and upscale.
Yeah.
But the other part is going to be majority a little bit on the quicker side, because you can't sustain the labor piece.
It's kind of, you got to roll with the punches and roll with technology.
That's right.
And I, with the advent of AI and the fact that it's just exponentially getting bigger, a lot of people, what was it? I was at Target a month or so ago, and I heard we were in the self-checkout lanes, and there was like one person checking people out, but all the checkout lanes were open. And I heard somebody behind me like saying, "So much for creating more jobs." And I wanted to turn around and be like, "Listen, you have to adapt." I say this, I've said this a lot. I say this all the time, but like the horse and buggy business was done because of the car business.
That's right.
And if you sit there and just try to keep things the same,
you'll be obsolete.
Yeah,
but you said it right on the nose. When you start looking at technology and even management, leadership of management, I find it interesting. Some people complain about this new generation. They want everything and they're lazy. And I look at them and then I start to realize you haven't adapted. You haven't kept up with the leadership of today, right? You're still sitting in the 80s and 70s mentality.
Yeah.
You got to understand that you're not going to change the world. You got to make sure you can mold it to your best advantage. I think these young people that come in are extremely bright. You just need to know. Way. You just need to know how to motivate them, how to drive them, how to look at what makes them fulfilled, and then they're even great. Because the thing that I've seen is that once you see that, you can see that they're loyal to you once they start understanding what you're giving to them in return. What happens is, if you don't have that mindset, then you're always going to say these people are the young generation is this, and this, and you'll be obsolete.
Well,
I always tell people when I hear that, I say, what's the most modern book of leadership you've read? When was the last one? And they're like, 1990, and you're like, well, you've missed out 24 years of leadership, right? So just because you graduate college doesn't mean you don't keep up with the educational part of leadership and things of that nature.
Yeah, well, so some books that are focusing that are focused on kids.
Here's the funniest thing: Harvard is online for free, and if you always go to a management or anything like that, most universities you can find their books, and that is telling you what
free library.
That's right. What they're training, what you're looking in the future for, what these young talent is coming up. If you're going to go back there with your 1970 or 80s mentality, and you're not going to connect, so there's going to be a disconnect.
Yeah.
The ability to manage a baby boomer, an X, and a Y, a millennial is the art, right? You don't manage them the same. They're all, the objective is to get there, but you manage them a little bit differently, and that's what makes it unique.
Yeah.
Because that way you can tie into a millennial and say, oh yeah, he relates with me, or Xer, right?
Right.
If you try to teach and train or work with an Xer the same way you work with a Gen Y or Gen Z, you're going to be in trouble. They don't mesh. So you have to understand that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, hoping not to sound cynical like that guy, the guys from the 80s, but I think there's pros and there's cons as well. I think so the pro would be like, when I was a kid, I was around basic technology. And so my mom and, my parents are technically illiterate compared to me. Right. But then you move on to this next generation that's super tech savvy that can, if I handed like a 15-year-old or somebody who knows social media, which pretty much, a lot of kids do. Now, it doesn't say this whether or not social media is good or bad, but if they know, a lot of kids know how to manage it, they could get me like 1,000 followers, and no problem. But the con that I've seen, and I could be just me not seeing it all, but the con is a really social awkwardness from a lot of younger kids. Yeah. Like, communicating without making eye contact. I see at the gym that I work out at, the younger people that work there seem a lot more socially awkward. again, not making eye contact. It doesn't mean, I don't know. It feels like there's something missing, whether it's, I don't know if it's because of what happened to the pandemic too, because I think that caused a lot of people, like, people are at the grocery store and they're just like tunnel vision going to where they're going, and like no idea that there's all this beautiful life of humanity around them. You know what I mean? So
no, I would agree in some aspect of what you're saying. Emotional intelligence is something that's very hard right now, right? Young kids are being challenged with that. But it's a evolution of humanity, right? It's an evolution. When you look at the main societies, Europe, because I go to Europe a lot, and it's happening in Europe. It's not an American thing. It happens in Europe. It happens here. It happens there. Now, different countries have different laws, right, to protect the children.
Yeah.
But you are right. But the advantage of what you said is you're exactly right. These young kids are coming with the knowledge that that's their future. They better be tech savvy. Right. They better understand the world. Otherwise, they'll be obsolete. It's when people say the grandmother issue where she comes by and says, "Hey, I can't get into Facebook."
Yeah.
And you're like, Grandma, I've told you this 5 times. I'm going to do it one more time, right? It's that concept. You have to remember that's their world. This is the world they're getting prepared.
Yeah.
And with AI coming, like you said, it's going to rock their world, because do we need programmers down the road? We need programmers for the AIs maybe, but they're starting to do things that it's very interesting. So when you look at the entire food and beverage industry, or any industry at all, you have to understand that there's certain basics. Leadership's going to be there, right? The ability to manage people, whether you manage 100 IT guys or 100 food and beverage guy, you have to be able to manage them, and you have to look at them as individually from what they've learned, right? Exactly what you say. They're impatient. They want instant gratification.
Right.
So they're looking for this. Well, are they wrong? If we took our eyes and not judge it from what we grew up,
right?
We grew up saying you got to wait your turn to be there, right? You got to.
But there are, I think it teaches certain virtues that are innately. Listen, like you talked about management. I think a lot of kids would make good managers because they don't know how to manage, because there's that social aspect that's missing. So I think there is the good and the bad, and I totally agree with coming at it with an open mind, so that we're not just these jaded, old guys just like saying back in my day, I totally think that's awesome. But there are qualities. I mean, for example, kids today are more depressed than they were 20 years ago.
Well, yeah, social media is showing that's causing depression, and even suicide is skyrocketing among a certain number of hours that you use. That is 100% true. But think about this for a second. When you look at Salesforce, right? The Salesforce from the old days, you used to go to a building and work, and you would sell, right?
Yeah.
They're not going in the building. They're not seeing eye to eye. Now the Salesforce is more of
an online type thing, right?
So they're homing their skill set on what the future's calling for, right? Is the future saying I'm going to fly to Japan and meet the guy and shake hands? You and I may say that's the old way. That's the way to do it. Look at somebody's eyes and do it the right way. But in about 10, 15 years, those individuals like us are retiring. So the next one coming up is not used to that. So we're going to be the awkward ones if we're not in tune with the way the world moves.
No, I get, you're like out of touch with the world, right?
That's
when
right.
You come back.
And they're going to be like, why is this guy? I'll give you an example.
So people who go to jail, like Shawshank Redemption,
there
remember?
You go.
The guy.
Exactly right there.
What's his name? The guy with the mouse.
Yes. But that's what I'm talking
about. Was that
what
you were going to say?
Yeah, it was very similar to what I was going to say. But when you said it right on the nose, like phone calls. I'll give you an example. You and I probably grew up with a phone. Everybody called you. You had no problem picking up the phone. It was like, hey, how you doing? What's up?
Yeah.
Now, if somebody calls you, you're like, why are you calling me?
Yeah, what's this weird?
You see how we've adapted?
Yeah.
So the human can adapt to the changes. When people used to knock on your door, you'd run over there and say, hey, somebody's at the door.
Yeah, but
now they come knocking on your door. You're like, who is that? Why are they at my house? So technology alters individuals, and it alters everything, and not just hotels and restaurants. It alters the entire scope of the landscape.
But I don't know. Sorry to interrupt, but I just don't know if it's for the better in that social aspect. I think whether or not it's for the better or not, I think it's inevitable. So I think
that's exactly the word.
But for me, it's like I'm less social because I do text too, right? Mm-hmm. And just having started this podcast, being social and talking to people face to face, my mood has completely changed because I'm looking forward to having these connections with people on a regular basis. And I think when you cut that out entirely, that's not there, it diminishes quality of life.
You just said it. Why some F&B is better than other,
right?
The connection.
Yeah.
If you have a connection in a restaurant, you enjoy the restaurant.
Right.
The food could
feel
be
like you're home, right?
That's exactly right. That's why the key for restaurants and any service industry is the connection. Now, how you connect with those individuals ties in the environment, right? So I've worked, I've worked as a waiter, and so I can come in and look at a table, analyze it very quick, and say, okay, these are businessmen. My connection is going to be brief, to the point, and efficient.
Yeah.
Right, because they're in a business, they don't want me interrupting.
Right.
At the same time, I can look at a table when I was younger and say, "Oh, look, they're here to have a good time. That's the big guy. He wants to be the big guy in the table.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure I charm that guy, make him look right." It's the connection that builds that. That's why when you go to fast food chain restaurants, they're efficient. They're transactional, but they're not experiential.
Right.
You don't walk away. Yet you go to a mom and pa guy, and the owner's talking to you, and totally. That's what makes the connection. And those are the restaurants that I think, in the restaurants and food and beverage that do difference, is when they don't treat you as a product.
Just another number, and you'll come back, dude. We've been to, there's a restaurant in Capel called Olay's.
Olay's.
Yeah, you've been there. Oh. We know the owner. Everybody knows the owner.
You see,
right?
There's the connection.
So we go in there, and you just go in there. He's walking around talking to people, and we've been every Friday. Like, it's an amazing experience. He comes in. They were promoting their new beer. It was the Heineken Silver. It's like the 100-calorie silver, and they didn't have any that were cold, because I guess they ran out of stock, and so they got another beer. But he comes back out with a couple of them on ice in an ice bucket and just brings out, hey, for when they cool down, that kind of thing. The owner. So it's just those little touches, I think. And you nailed it, because you said exactly what. Jerez is the sommelier I interviewed, and he's the food and bev director at the Thompson Hotel. Mm-hmm. So he was like, the secret to business, especially in the food and bev business, is the connection. He's like, now I know, he's talking about referencing me. He's like, I know you're a musician, so now I've got that in the back of my head. So I'm going to let the whole team know that you're a musician. Mm-hmm. We can do something now that I know you have a wife, that you have 2 kids. What are things that we can do to make your experience feel like at home?
That's correct.
So you do
that is the key to the business. That's exactly right. That's why I say there's going to be 2 types of restaurants, or maybe 3. There'll be the high end, the middle in that area, and then there's going to be the transactional. Where you just coming in, just give me my food and let me go home. And that's why drive-ins and restaurants are taking a lot of takeout. And even in the industry of alcohol, look at all the people that are retail alcohol is blown up. It's going down a little bit, but still the people are buying it and taking it home. So you're going to see growth in that business.
Is that newer? Is that a newer thing? People like big retail shops that just sell like Total Wine kind of thing?
Well, yeah, you're going to see the retail industry when COVID blew up because of the fact that you couldn't go anywhere.
Everybody was drinking.
So everybody thought it was going to go back to the other way, right? But it hasn't. It's gone down, but it hasn't gone down to that point. The retail, and again, it goes back to I enjoy wine with my friend.
Yeah,
we connected. And that's what people are doing. They're connecting more than ever before. They're being more selective, I think, than before, but they are connecting. So it's very interesting when you talk about it, like how the world's changed in the last 5-6 years, right?
Yeah.
Again, I go to Europe and I see other countries because I want to see what their food scene is like, and that's Europe still has the little restaurants and things of that nature, but they have struggled, and you're starting to see the changes. The first McDonald's that I walked in and I was in Madrid somewhere, and I said, oh, kids wanted a McDonald's, so I went over there. No tellers. It was all automated.
Really?
Entirely.
That's surprising.
And you just got a ticket and you sat down and they called your name on a big thing, and that was it. No more, good day, how are you? The cashiers are gone.
There is the difference still from every time I go back to France or go to Paris or any big city. There's this to some extent in New York as well, but like there's less food chains. Like you said, it's more privately owned, and people like that. I think people like that experience.
Yes,
but I don't know if that's just a small or a concentrated city thing, because there's places like that in Dallas to a certain extent, but I'd say it's not nearly like it is in France or in Europe, where it's mostly these small.
I do agree with you 100% that the smaller ones are still the majority, but you're starting to see the shift. It's funny you say, when you look at even America, when you say, okay, New York's got this and that in Chicago, when you start looking at Richard Melvin business, for example, he owns 50, 70 restaurants in Chicago. They all may seem like they're independent, but they're not. They're all under one major company. When you look at laundry, or they've got like 10 different brands.
It seems like what, but it's not.
But it's not. So that's what you're starting to see, because they can, when you get that kind of a bulk team, you can help each other when times are hard, right? They have absorbed. Mastro's used to be privately owned, and now it's not privately owned anymore, right? So when you start looking at them, the art is making sure that when you take a company like a restaurant, like if I was going to say I was going to buy that restaurant, is not to change what made them successful, right? The hard part is everybody tries to change and turn it to your way, right? No. They're successful that way. Leave it that way.
Right.
Just maybe fine tune it with some of your areas of what you think you want to do, but don't take away the success of that individual. But yeah, New York, Chicago still has it. It's a more of a foodie, what we call a foodie town. Dallas is growing though. Dallas is growing very well. I think the whole Texas area is growing very well. You know, the influx of people coming in are causing that change as well.
Yeah,
the food is getting really good. I'm telling you, I eat a lot and the food is getting really good out here.
What's the Italian restaurant? Is it Monarch, the Italian restaurant that you've been to a few times?
Yeah, Monarch is on the top floor.
Is that near the Thompson or in the?
I believe it's in the Thompson top floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, because Phil, my buddy, was telling me about that. Yeah,
but who owns it? Arthur Ashe and something.
Okay.
So it's a big company that owns restaurants in Chicago, owns restaurants.
And they're just renting out the top?
They have restaurants in Arizona.
Okay.
So you see how it can grow very big from a perspective of saying, oh, it's a small. No, it's not. It may be run this way, which is the right way to run it.
It gives that vibe, yeah.
You want
like it's the only place like it. You're not going to find anything like it. That's it. That's the spot.
That's the spot to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense, man.
Yeah.
I mean, there's kind of that vibe too at the Gaylord as far as the restaurants that are there. There's that, what's that?
We have an Italian. We have
where my mom had her 70th.
Old Hickory Steakhouse.
Old Hickory, yeah, that was good. And there's some good whiskeys there too.
That's the idea. The idea for food and beverage people that work in big hotels is to try to make them unique, right? Make the experience unique. So if you're staying at the hotel 5 days or 4 days, I want you to eat here, and it'd be completely different than here. But the service has to be at this level, right? That's not going to be compromised, the service level and the connections. But the experience has to be different. Otherwise, it's like, right, let me go outside and leave. And that's where I think, people say, well, you've been lucky. And I'm like, and I look at it, people who work very hard tend to be luckier than the people that don't, right? So people say that.
Okay, so while you say that, that's the other thing, is that's the mentality that is also shifting for the negative with the younger generation.
True.
A mentality where a victim mentality, whereas a winner's mentality where you're like, I'm gonna keep hustling, and if I don't make it, it's on me.
Yeah, that might be true, but that's a downfall from everybody gets a trophy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, when people argue that participation is important, but you don't get a trophy.
Do you think that it's the parenting in the last 25 years that's done that?
Well, it's us.
Right.
It's us.
Not me, man.
It's us. It's us. I have 2 kids, and
No, you're not like that. I'm not like that.
I'm not like that. But you have to. One of my kids came in, and he brought a little trophy, and I was looking at my wife, and she was looking at me, and I was like. And I went to soccer matches, and I don't think he won one game.
Yeah,
and he was good, but the team didn't win. So he came, and I'll never forget. He goes, "Daddy, are we gonna put these with the other trophies?" And I looked at him, and I could just, Luis was looking at me like, "Oh, please don't break his heart, right?"
Yeah.
So I remember looking at him and said, "I go, Jordan, how many games did you win?" And he goes, "None." "How many did you play?" I go, 5. And he's like, "You didn't win no games, buddy." And how do you get a trophy?
And I don't think that's wrong.
He goes, but I was great, Daddy. I was the best player. And I go, great. You get an individual, but your team lost. And so I said, look, we're going to leave it here, but it doesn't go in the trophy room. Now that he plays baseball, he's competitive. Now when he wins, he comes and he wants to win, right? Yeah. It's not. So you have to teach that. But
do you know how many parents would hear that and think,
and be upset.
"Oh my God, you're scarring your child."
Yes.
But I completely it's like you're helping them. You're helping.
They're going to learn it one way or the other.
Exactly. So Ellie just started soccer, and it's funny to watch these like 6-year-olds just like cats, just trying to herd cats. It's hilarious to watch, and she's a very sweet kind of. She's been taught by us to be kind, right? Mm-hmm. But there's to know when to have grit and go after the ball and not feel like you're being aggressive, or no, it's okay to be aggressive in this case in order to win, to have that mentality. And so you've got to teach that. I think sports is like, me and JB were talking about this the other day. Sports is like an amazing way to teach so many things, including I think competition and and confidence. It teaches you to not feel like, you know what, if I lose, it's because I didn't try, not because I was scared to try.
Right.
And that carries over to everything.
Absolutely. The thing I always look at is technology has put a curveball, right? But they are competitive. You just have to find how to make them competitive, right? You ever watch them play
video games? Call of Duty,
My
it's
God,
insane,
they're
man.
insane. They're throwing. That means the competitiveness is in there.
Right.
It's how do you extract that and apply it to the business world, right? I've always said this. I grew up in an inner city, right? I grew up in Chicago, and by force of nature, my parents were immigrants, so we had no choice but to go out and earn the money, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at that, I have the drive, right? Because you only have to be poor one time to remember for the rest of your life. It could scar you, and probably I am scarred. But when you remember certain things, you never want to go back to that.
Yeah.
So my kids have never seen that.
Yeah.
Right. My kids have never not had food, never had. So that part is missing, right? Now, am I at fault? Perhaps, but we do things that you can say, okay, I don't want my kid to go through what I went through. But for example, we go out and I'll tell you a story that was really heartbreaking at the same time. It was the reality of life. We were in San Francisco and there was a bunch of food that was left over. So I said, let's go give it to the homeless. So I got Andres with me. And so I took it. I was in my business suit. I was still in suit. My kids were there. So I took Andres, and as I was handing out this food to this homeless, a gentleman came in and pulled out a knife at us and said, this is my food. And jacked us right there. He owned he was homeless himself.
He was the food hustler?
It's not even food hustler. He owned the entire block. And I remember sitting there, I'm like, I'm not going to give you nothing, right? I'm not. But then for 2 seconds, I realized I had Andres with me.
Yeah.
It's very different if I got to stand up for myself versus somebody.
You can't defend it.
So I told him to get in the car, and I drove away with food for almost about 60 people that this man robbed us. Now I went to the police, or I found the first police officer on the way, and he goes, well, listen, there's not much we really can do. San Francisco's a little bit different nowadays than before. But
when was this?
This was about before I got here, about a year before I got here.
Okay.
And so that tells you
5 years ago.
Yeah, but that's an example of what my son saw in reality, right? He witnessed that we kind of got jacked, giving away food to the homeless.
So what lesson did you try to impart with him?
Well, when we went back, he goes, Dad, what was that? I go, that's the real world. There are people who just don't care. So you always have to be one step ahead, align yourself. And that doesn't mean you don't do good things, right?
Yeah.
Because now my strategy, if we're going to go out and give food to homeless, we bring a bunch of people with us. It's not just me and my son, right? I thought it was a smart thing to do. Clearly, I didn't think it out.
Yeah,
clearly,
depending on where you go, for sure. Yeah.
But it doesn't change, but it makes them realize what really the world is. And traveling is another one. I take my kids and we eat everywhere in the world, but I also travel and they can see the other side of the world, right? If you go to certain countries, you're grateful to live in America. You no matter what anybody tells you, there are very few countries you can go and live like you live here.
And again, when we're talking about people from any walk of life coming back together to be able to have a drink together, what do you think is the one drink universally that somebody would have with some? I think a beer, but what do you think?
I think beer and wine are the two major ones, right? That's why the beer and wine sales are astronomical. I think wine is simple for everybody. It doesn't complicate. Beer is very simple, right?
Right.
You get the connoisseurs.
Not the craft ones here in America.
You get the connoisseurs that want this and that. But the point of drinking is together is socializing. Yeah. It's how do we get together, right? It's just a refreshing way of getting together. I think as people get older, it's kind of interesting. They say this, but 80% of your time with your child is gone by the time he's 17.
Yeah, I heard that. That's so sad.
So now what do? He's distancing because he's got his social life. So adults start to get together more and have more drinks. It's a social bonding. It's been here since the beginning of time. So that's why I think people enjoy a good cocktail, a good glass of wine together. Now, if you're drinking by yourself a bottle a day, then maybe there's something else. That's a different story, right? But the socializing part is what makes it very enjoyable. Yeah, so that's how I drink my wine. I'm a social drinker.
What's your favorite white? You mentioned Sancerre earlier.
Sancerre's a white. I do like white. I do. I really enjoy the full body Cabernets. Bordeaux are great. Burgundies are great. I'm a little bit of torn between France, right? Because I love French wines and California. Spanish are great too. They're all within that realm, but to me, the top two is going to be, and I know my Spanish family is going to hate me for saying this, but it's going to be probably California, the Napa area, and France, and the Bordeaux area. They're different. Yeah. But that's what makes them great, right? The European has the old world type of flavor, whereas the California's got the robust charm and flavors that go with it. So, yeah, that wine is my
your thing. Yeah, for sure. For me, it's France and Italy. It's come around to Italy because they have the same. It has the same kind of diversity of like you can have something sweeter, but it's got their whites are dry and good, and then the Barolos are some of my favorite wines. I love those, man. Those are so good. What do you guys sell the most of? What's like your most popular type of, or wine grape?
Cabernet. Cabernet dominates. Vodkas dominate. It depends on the season as well.
True.
Tequilas can take over very quickly during the summer because of the margaritas and the frozen drinks. And then rums kick in there. But vodka is basically the king one right now.
Oh yeah,
vodka's usually
which brand? Which would you say?
It depends. I mean, we do very good with Grey Goose, Tito's,
the usual suspects.
Well, the usual suspects that come in. And now there's a lot of coming in the market. Like everybody's getting their brand now and putting a label on it.
All these celebrities on.
Well, they all jump on the wagon. The reality is that if you have that kind of base and you can draw that kind of attention, why not?
Why not do it? You're selling a product. Yeah. And if it tastes good, then that's a plus.
That's exactly right. I mean, last time I was at the market, I even saw Snoop Dogg had a wine. So I thought with this picture right in the front, I said, "Look at that!"
What's it? Do you know what it's called? Is it?
No, I don't know what it's called. I just walked by and I saw it there. I thought, "Oh, look at that! That's interesting." Which is probably otherwise it wouldn't be there, right? So as long as you give a good product and you can, and if you have a status, you can back it up. That's fine. I mean, there's enough for everybody. That's what I tell people. You can enjoy. Some people like you said, you had a blind tasting and you like Smirnoff.
I know.
See,
blown away.
Somebody from Grey Goose would say that's impossible until you do the blind tasting. You wouldn't know.
Grey Goose was one of the bottom ones too for me. Yeah.
Whereas I personally like Grey Goose, but I've never done this blind tasting. Right?
We should do it. That'd be fun.
That would be a good event just to do the wines and
we should do it with wines too because line up some. But the thing with wine, it's a lot easier to tell.
Well, you can if the brand the varietal is the same. It'll stand out a little bit more, right? But it's all flavors, right? So like I enjoy Grey Goose, right? But it's also mindset. When I taste this and I taste that, I'm not looking to critique it, right? Some people say, is Pepsi better than Coke? I've done the blind tasting. Okay, can I pin it out as soon as you mix any drink in there? I'm like, no. Can you do the other way around? Can you pin? I don't have that palate to be able to do that, right? I don't think most people either do, but I'm sure there's somebody that does that. But it's all based on what you enjoy at the moment. There was a study done that they were giving a certain type of pizza store, regular commercial store, I think it was Domino's or Pizza in Italy, right by the water.
Oh, yes.
You remember that?
I don't remember the outcome, but
the people were saying this was great and delicious. But if you give the same thing somewhere else, they don't review it the same way, right? It's the
presentation.
It's the experience. It's the presentation. If you're having this whatever vodka that you don't enjoy, but you're having it with one of the most beautiful women in your world, and your eyes are glowing, and your heart is pumping, that drink is great. That drink reminds you, that flavor will remind you for the rest of your life of that experience. And that's what food and beverage is. It's all about that experience. It's how you walk away saying in your mind and your memory, I remember this. I always say this. Most people, when they go to a hotel and I ask them, how was your stay? Oh, I went to Jamaica 10 years ago. Did you get a good room? I can't remember. But I will tell you what I do remember when I went to Jamaica. I remember the service. The guy would pull my wife's chair out and he goes, my lady, right this way, my lady. And my wife kept looking at me like, why don't you treat me like that? Right? That was the experience.
So you never came back.
I was like, I'm never coming back from this one.
Yeah, exactly.
But he was everywhere he went. And if he saw her walk, my lady, how are you? You see, it made it a wow. And that's 15, 20 years ago. And that's all you remember. You remember the experience and what the chef did. One of the things that the chef did for us for cooking, right?
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that people remember is what you experienced, and maybe that wine played a role, right?
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things that remind you of something internally that we all have. Even the younger generation, they have that, but in a different way. So we just have to work with them and find ways to be mutual beneficials along the way. You know?
Yeah. I guess that's the goal at for what you're doing. You're a pretty social guy. You can talk to anybody. I think I'd say that's part of your personality. Is that a big part of your skill set for what you do now? As a food and bev director.
It's kind of interesting you say that. I'm most people won't believe me, but I'm really an introvert.
So you just go home exhausted.
I go exhausted. It's something I learned to do, right? I grew up in Chicago, and in the neighborhood I lived, there was two things you could do. You could talk very well, or you learn how to fight very well, right? I was 105 pounds, so I'm not going to be a great fighter. So I learned how to talk and communicate, and so you learn how to get out of that shell, right? But it is very important that you learn. This is a skill you can learn. Some people are naturally extroverts, right? But most people that meet me say, wow, this guy is engaging. He can talk to anybody. But it is a skill. When I go home, I need my time alone. I'm very quiet. But yes, it is a skill that you require because you are going to engage with people in food and beverage. That is the goal, right? I'm a business person, right? My degree is all in business. That's my strength. I believe it or not, it's financials. But I've learned the other side.
The hospitality.
I learned the hospitality. Yeah. I learned what makes people. When I worked in a French restaurant, it was a very high-end French restaurant in Chicago. I wasn't the best French server, and you know this because you're French. You kind of know this to some degree. In France, the service is, if you go to those high levels, it's perfection. It's all about perfection, but they don't connect very well. They're there, but they're not.
It's etiquette.
That's right. And so I wasn't good at that. And so in this restaurant, I learned that I got better tips because I engaged. I studied the individuals, right? And this all went through, like I said, I think I was taking a psychology class, so I started using it at work, right, as a waiter. And so then awesome. I learned that if you study the table and you manage the table, you can get deep connections with people, right? And so that's exactly the art, is the art of understanding. So that's why I learned that you have to be able to communicate with people. You have to be able to look at them in the eyes, like you say. Yeah. But understand that if you're talking to somebody that doesn't want to look in your eyes, don't force them. Right. Know how to flex.
Or find a way to engage just so that they can get them comfortable enough to do that.
That's exactly right. Some people say, well, that guy doesn't looking at me in the eye. He's not paying attention. Don't think that way. Yeah. Understand that maybe that's not his way of body communication.
Right.
Some people say, well, I'm going to make him start looking at me in the eyes. Well, you're losing the whole thought of what you're doing here. The idea is to connect with people in their level, not make them your level.
Right.
Hospitality happens for you or to you, which is a very famous thing I had heard once. I give you an example. I go to the restaurant and people tend to know who I am because I work in a pretty big place, and they'll send me a shrimp cocktail, right? Well, that really didn't do the right thing because I'm allergic to shrimp, right?
What do you do?
So well, at that point, I let everybody else eat it, right? But so hospitality has to be for you. Understand who I am. Understand who Pierre is, right? If you come in and I know now the wine you like, I can say, hey, I got this. I want you to taste this. Even if you don't order this bottle, right?
Yeah.
You did something for me. You did something that made me feel unique and special.
Yeah.
So sending things to people like, oh, this is on the house. Again, you're transactional, not experiential.
Right.
If I got to know you a little bit, I would send you the thing that makes you go, wow.
Or they see maybe that your shrimp, that you don't have any shrimp tails that have been shells on your plate, and they ask, they say, oh, you didn't feel like eating shrimp, and then you say you're allergic. Boom, mental note for next time, right?
But you see, they could have, if in the hospitality industry, your job is to be proactively looking at that, right? So when you come in, and if I was going to buy a dessert for somebody or an appetizer, I would always, introduce myself. What do you like in the menu? What's catching your eye? And if he says A, B, and C, before he puts that order in, I'm giving him A, B, or C.
Right.
There you go. This is on the house because I beat you to it. He's still going to order another appetizer, most likely. So I'm not worried about that. It's the thing that I tell people: don't drop don't bend over and pick up a nickel and drop a dollar, right? You got to be smart. You got to be intelligent. That service is about touches. And
I've done these kind of personal experiments too. As far back as college, when I would try to interact with people at the bookstore, people serving me, and just say something nice or try to be not charming, just be friendly.
Be friendly,
right? And the service and the reaction that you get, not only is it on another level because you're connecting with somebody, but you feel good because you've had a pleasant experience, as opposed to just having no emotion behind the transaction, like you said, making it transactional. And there's something about it's almost like a rush to have that. It's a great feeling to have that interaction with somebody, because that's what connects us as people. That social aspect, you know.
You hit it right on the nose. It's only fake if you're faking it. Right. And people who are in the service industry, who are real, true service people, they don't fake it. I don't.
Or if you're new to it and are awkward, you gotta learn.
That's practice, right? That leads to practice, and the ability to be sincere. Like, if I don't like your tattoo, I shouldn't say I like your tattoo.
True. Yeah. Exactly.
That's being realistic. So people can identify fakeness, right? So when you're sincere, I like serving people. If you come see me, most people are like, "Wow, this guy makes me feel like a king." It's my art. It's my profession. When I go see you, hear you music, what do I feel like? Wow. Right? If I sit down and I hear somebody sing, that's their art. That's what they're performing. That's what it is. It doesn't mean they're trying to con me or fool me or anything. When a sommelier comes to the table, that's his art.
Right.
He's showcasing his art. And he's not trying to con you to buy a more expensive wine.
Right.
Because if you gave him the parameters, he'll stay within the parameters. Right. So the same with waiters and the food and beverage industry. It's just an art that you hone and you practice and you continue to practice and you get really good at it. But it's sincere, because the fake ones, you can pop them even after 20 years.
Yeah.
You can pop them that they're like, oh, this guy's just doing this because he's trying to jack up my check or something like that.
Sounds rehearsed.
It sounds rehearsed.
Yeah.
The people who are sincere say sincere things. Like, there is nothing that you can't say when people come into a restaurant that you don't like something, right? I've seen guys come in with great business jackets, right? Is that what I'm going to say? I don't know. It depends on the individuals. I stop by and say that's a great choice of wine because I like it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm trying to upsell the wine or anything like that. So it is an art, and it's something that's why I say you have to train and you have to continue to get young people who are willing to learn in this business, because the experience and the older, unfortunately, the older workforce is moving on, and we don't see this influx of food and beverage people coming on. So
what are you getting out of the of your passion? What are you getting out of it when you're waiting on people or helping them, and you feel, what do you personally get out of it?
It is an art, and once people get that, then they understand. Anybody who's artistic understands it. What does a painter get when he draws a painting? Inspiration.
Right.
A musician. Like, it's very interesting because people who work in food and beverage, who are really what we call foodies, I can listen to Maria Callas sing La Mama Morta, right? And I can live it. Right. And that, why? Because I'm somewhat of artistic, right? I can live that song. I can understand the agony and the pain, or the famous guitarist from Spain,
Pepe Romero.
No, Pepe, that's a good one though. But he plays the Alhambra, Segovia. Segovia, right? Segovia. When you listen to that, you're like, wow, right? So it's like seeing a painting. When you go see a painting, you're like, you're blown. It's an art. So you get the self-satisfaction that you did something good. You took care of people. You serving and servicing people is an internal drive. That's why not everybody can do it.
Yeah.
That's why there's people that, I hate this job. They're doing it for the money.
Yeah.
They don't want to serve. That's not their forte. It's not their calling.
Yeah.
That's why you always have to be very careful between knowing to be fake and not fake. The guy who doesn't have it internally, doesn't drive, he can do the best he can, but he's never going to be a true natural person who enjoys it.
Yeah.
But it is an art that you can skillfully, with practice, get better and better at.
Yeah. So it's a sense of fulfillment. It gives you a sense of fulfillment.
I love my job.
Yeah.
I love my job. I've been doing this again for like almost 30 years, and it's food and beverage is very unrewarding. Very challenging. 9 out of 10 restaurants fail.
Yeah.
Right? Long hours. If you didn't enjoy what you do, it would be horrific. I can't imagine the people that were in this industry and did it for the money.
Well, it's like a musician, right?
Exactly. Imagine being a musician.
Trying to make it as a touring, like I love music, don't get me wrong, but trying to make it as a touring band, the odds are just like the hustle, the grind. We did it. I did it for, 5 years, 6 years with the band that I was with. And I mean, we played some great shows, had some great times, but man, I've got a friend of mine who's in a band that's done success quite well. They're all called the Unlikely Candidates. And they've had like a top 10 or top number 1 alternative on the radio a couple of years ago, and they're touring right now, and they're just grinding. They're in their mid 30s. Dude, that's the life, man.
Because you live it.
Yeah.
I can tell you, when I make a mistake or something doesn't go as planned, I don't look at it as a mistake. People say, "Oh yeah, no." I look at it. I learned something not to do next time. Even at my age, which I'm, in the 50s, I've learned that it's all about how do you get better, and don't look at it as a mistake. Look at it as take everything with a lesson learned. Okay, what could we have done differently, right? I love food and beverage. There's no going around that. I love managing people, but the biggest thing that I've learned in managing is you hire people for their talent. Let them do their talent. Don't micromanage them.
Right.
Let them shine. Right. The things that it's very interesting. My philosophy. I know it's weird. Sometimes people say, I like to not be the smartest guy in the room. I want to be surrounded by very bright people. Right. They make me brighter. And then don't tell them what to do. There's a big fault that people hire people and then they tell them, well, this is how we're going to do it here. This is how we do it here when you do the training. Well, wait a minute. This guy came from a great restaurant. He runs a great thing.
Let's learn something.
Let's let him run and see what happens, right?
Yeah.
We can always pull left, pull right. So business and the F&B especially, once you identify a creative person, because they're all mainly creative, chefs, managers, sommeliers, don't take away their creativity.
Don't stifle it.
You can harness it and move left and right, giving them the vision, but let them drive. Don't tell people what to do. One of the things I've always said, and people say, well, you've been pretty good this hotel and that hotel, the reputation goes well, you've done good for yourself. I go, it's not really me. It's not really me. I sometimes look at people, I'm like, do I really deserve this? Do I deserve this whole part of it? It's that guy and that guy and that guy. They're the real talent, right? It's how you get them all together, and with chefs, control a little bit of that thought process they have, because chefs are artistic 100%.
So you're in charge of also saying what's on the menu. What's on the menu?
Yeah, well, I don't do. See, that's the thing. I have the vision. I delegate the vision to the chefs, and the chefs create.
Right, but at the end of the day, you have to choose the chef.
Yes, that is how it works. Yes, right. You got to hire somebody that always has the vision that you want to go without hurting the complexity of the restaurant, right? So, for example, I don't believe in old school yelling chefs, right? I don't yell. Nobody yells in my
Gordon Ramsay style.
Yeah, that's movies. That's TVs.
That's TV.
I don't. I am a very cool-headed. We all learn. We all can. Things happen and we move on. The great thing about food and beverage is we're not brain surgeons. No one's going to die. We can fix it and correct it. But yes, you do have to make the decision of what's the leadership going to be like. Like, I'm very cautious of hiring very temperamental chefs, no matter how good they are, if they can't get along with the front of the house, right? You need synergy.
There's that sense of ego with some chefs that can...
There's some of that. There's some of that in the front of the house. Some guys come in, think that... So you have to balance. But remember that the artistic people come with a little bit of the swagger. Right. Because imagine
it's integrity, right?
That's exactly right. It's my art, right? It's when you play, it's your music. When a sommelier comes out, this is my wine recommendation. I put a portfolio together, right? So the passion is there. So you have to be careful of how you share the vision, direct the vision with their passion. So I never take anything away from the individuals, because they, at the end of the day, I may be driving the bus, but they're the mechanics. I don't even drive. I think I sit in the back, to be honest with you. I think there's somebody else driving.
Well, you had to set it up at the beginning.
Yeah, you just got to get it all. You got to make sure that the wheels are there and the engine is there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're the magicians. They're the ones who make it happen. And then you got to control upper. Managing up is just as important as managing downward, as I tell people. There's very interesting. I find this very challenging in some areas where I go and help some other people where they're trying to please maybe one person on their food and beverage, right? And that's not the job. You can't, if your integrity is, I'm going to do a farm to table market restaurant, you need to be true to your target and your niche. Otherwise you become, people who try to do everything for everyone become nothing to nobody. So you have to be in your niche, right? You can't be a restaurant. If you are, you can be certain restaurants like Cheesecake Factory, a little bit for everybody, right?
Yeah.
I love it. Their concept is beautiful. It's all great. But
I mean, he's huge,
it's
dude.
huge. And they got what
portions
they know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
That's their concept. But if you're opening a farm-to-table market, you got to be careful of what you put on that menu. You got to be creative because, if you go against what the market of your restaurant or your business is, you'll lose people along the way.
What's the identity, the brand
identity? The brand
yeah.
identity is gone.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, but all of them are artistic. You're an artist,
Yeah.
It's very, if you say, well, you should change this and that, people, you're like, right? So you have to do it very in a delicate way, and most people are reasonable. I think 95% of the people are very reasonable. They understand the vision. And as long as you're clear at the beginning, this is the vision of what this restaurant is going to be like. This is the vision of what the wines are going to be like, right? And you're the somm, but this is the vision. Because some individuals can come in and say, well, we're going to put all Bordeaux and French and $500 bottles of wine. And you're like, okay, our niche is about $150, buddy. Let's get into that world.
You got to be pragmatic.
Open.
Yeah.
You can't be, it's not Victor's way. I always say this when people say, well, no, it's not. It's not.
What the people want.
It's what the people want, and that's the business we're in. It's a business. Remember, food and beverage is a business.
Going back to what you're saying with that, Jerry was telling me about an experience he had with a vineyard, a champagne winery that came from France to do tasting, and the restaurant that had invited him served or brought out a bunch of flutes. And this goes to the integrity of the art of the artist, but he refused to put champagne in a flute. Mm-hmm. By the way, that's the first time I learned this. I learned this last week, that traditionally champagne is not drank in a flute. It's drank in a wine glass or those tulips.
The tulips.
And so, first of all, it makes complete sense because you can get your nose in there and smell. Right. Mm-hmm. So then when they opened the restaurant, I don't know if it was that restaurant or another one that Jerry was working at, it was a nice high-end restaurant. The couple asked for champagne, and they served it in tulip. And lo and behold, the clientele wanted a champagne flute. Mm-hmm. And so they gave them the champagne flute, right? The customer wants what the customer wants. Yes. But it's pretty, and so that's the two dichotomies, right? You've got the one side of the artist who says this must be served this way, and they're not going to argue with it because it makes sense, but they're not going to argue with the client who wants it served in a flute. A lot of people who've had the experience to work in nice restaurants and get paid very well, it's worth doing what you're doing. And I think a lot of people who are working in the not fine dining don't understand that aspect, is that you can make a lot of money as a waiter, a lot, especially in these high-end restaurants. But you got to be on the next level with that. You got to be good. You've got to be, like you said, where you're standing so you can see your other table, in the back of your eyes, in your peripheral, all these things that play into it.
The beauty of technology, it's all in a click. You don't know wines today, you can go online, and I guarantee you in 30 days, you can almost speak like an expert. If you really engage, if you really want to be there, you may not know the taste palette, right? But you can speak like an expert. It takes you, how long does it take you to 10 varietals and find the best 10 wines from France, Italy, Spain? And now you're communicating. Most people can't tell you more than 10 wines, but they talk like they know a lot about wines because they've experienced it, right? You can go online and learn this. If you want to learn about food, you want to be a master in Italian food, go online. It'll take you 30 days, and you just hit 30 days, 1 hour every day, and you get Napolitan food, Roman, Milan. You start hitting, and you will come out with the knowledge. It's educated knowledge, right? It's like when you go to school and you learn management, right? You learn management in school. Until you apply it, you don't really know the full value of it, right? You don't know what works and doesn't work. It's the same scenario. It is absolutely, so anybody can do hospitality. You just have to put it's a profession. You have to go in there and put your time and understand it. Here's a trick I tell all my waiters, and I always say this to everybody. First, all our waiters have to be, in our upscale restaurants, have to be certified in certain wine knowledge, right? There's a test you can take and things of that nature.
That's the sommelier one?
Well, we want everybody SOM 1 minimum,
SOM 1,
right?
Okay.
It's always a good thing to have, because if you're not investing in you as a company, why am I looking at you, right? You're going to be in my premier restaurant. Well, to be in the premier restaurant, you need to know
and
at least the basics.
Just for everybody to know, because I didn't know this until I did research on it. There is the Master Sommeliers Guild is what it is.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's like a national association. It's basically like an SAT test, but for wine.
It
so
is.
It's standardized.
Very hard.
We do it for piano as well. There's an equivalent for piano, but these standardized tests or exams is great, because if you go to New York or if you go to California, you're like, I'm a Somm 1, here's my certification. They know where you stand.
That's right.
Yeah,
the knowledge
which is great.
To be a master somm is very, very hard. I don't even come close to that. I drink good wine. I know how to pin it. I can tell you everything you want to know, but that's at a different level. They are true professionals of that.
I've seen I looked up, my buddy told me to look them up on Netflix. I forget the show is, but these guys can identify wines like
from regions.
They can identify the exact wine.
I started to work with countries. I can almost pin the countries now.
Yeah.
But that's an art, right?
Yeah.
This is where I go back to the master of your craft, master of your profession of what you do. And that's the reality. And you're right. You can make very good money. You can make $1,700 a day, $600 a day. But you only get what you put into it, right? And if you come in and you're not skilled enough to take from a psychological event, how do I run this table? How do I organize it? How I keep it tame? How I entertain the table? Because part of your job is also to keep the energy going in the table, right? There are times you go in and there might be a little bit of an argument going on. How do you diffuse that real quick and then try to change it? That's the art.
It takes a personality too.
It does. That's why not everybody can do it.
Even being an introvert, it's like, or if you've had like a really crappy day and you've got to go in there and really, be all smiles.
Here's what I tell people. Nobody goes in to hear your problems, right? It doesn't matter what business you're in.
Yeah.
If you're here to perform, and everybody's here to perform. We all have days, I don't always feel perfect. Nobody always feels perfect, but you have to remember that somebody's coming in. Think of it as an athlete. You're a professional athlete. You're getting paid for something. Do it right. Do it to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then you got to say, I'm injured and I got to get out of the game. And then today you say, I can't work and I need to go home. Right. But it is an art. It is a profession that, if done right, you can be very successful. Look, you can go from waiting tables to being a director of food and beverage, which is more of a director role, leadership role, right?
Yeah.
So it can get you from, I started in this industry as a busboy. Dishwasher busboy type of thing. So I never wanted to do it. I went to college to do business, but it drew me back in because I really love the interaction with people. I enjoy people. Yeah. It does drain me, but I enjoy it, right?
Yeah. I'm the same way. I'm like a introverted extrovert kind of a thing.
And that's okay. You can still be great at what you do. So what happened to me is I saw this. Now, the biggest challenge for people is, how do I get to those $150,000, $200,000 jobs, right? Well, you're not going to wake up overnight and get there.
Yeah.
You're going to have to earn your steps. And these are very hard-earned steps, right? Knowing you don't have to be a master sommelier to be a director of food and beverage. No, you don't. Yeah. You just have to be smart enough to know how to hire one.
Right.
And hire the right one, and understand that how do you manage an individual like that. I strongly recommend anybody that goes into food and beverage leadership is financially knowledgeable, because that is your biggest challenge: how to manage the financials with the service satisfactions and the business and the leadership and management, and how to handle the staff and things of that nature.
And a lot of that would be in choosing what's going on the price point of like your steaks and what you're going to set it at, and try to be net profitable, and know what people are going to buy, right?
Absolutely.
You're not putting a $80 steakhouse at a McDonald's, for example.
Yeah, if you that is an art that comes with finance itself. Is people think, well, is finance an art? Yeah, it is. If you think about it, it's a strategic plan of the future of how you're going to make money, how you're not going to make money. When I build, if we build a restaurant or a concept, and people think, oh, that guy's crazy, you're not going to make a penny, and then you make $500,000 more.
Right.
They're like, oh my goodness, what? Because the vision was there, right? But you have to strategically plot it out. You have to be smart. You have to understand the demand of where you're at and what's happening in your either hotel or in a freestanding restaurant. You got to be, location's important, right? Location is one of the things I tell most people. Location, food, and then service. Location is very important in restaurants. You can still build a very good one outside of the location, but location tends to drive. If you got 1,000 people walking around every day, that's an advantage
for sure. Well, the thing about the Gaylord is that it's its own almost resort, right? It's like its own.
Brilliant.
You get sucked in there, and it's
a
like
brilliant plan.
It's huge. Walking in there, so like regardless, you go there like once a year to maybe go see the ice sculptures. You're gonna walk by 10, 15 restaurants. You're gonna walk by 10, 20 shops. So it's like going to a mall, but like in a mall, in a hotel setting.
And what I love is when people say, "Well, we're gonna go there for the event in the winter," and then I see them back in January, February, March.
Yeah.
And now they start coming regularly because the place is a wow, right?
Yeah.
They're just building another one in San Diego. It's just a wow.
You walk inside.
Done right. It's done right. So.
You're taking somewhere else. How many restaurants are you?
I think there's nine total outlets in the.
That's a lot of restaurants to oversee, right? I mean,
it's all, again, you have an individual for each one with their creativity,
right?
And you don't take away that from them. And then most of them have a chef, so now you have different chefs, right? The chef for the Italian is very different from the chef from the steakhouse, and the Mexican chef is different. But you have to have meetings with all of them, and you all have to use your mind, and you have to be able to build a team where they can work together. So, for example, if the Mexican restaurant wants to put a steak on the menu, well, think about it. You got a steak guy over there, right there, who's a master chef in steaks and knows how to age beef and does things like that. Can he be helpful? Can he help you execute better?
Yeah, right.
That's one of the challenges. Is sometimes the artistic people don't really want to collaborate. So you have to be able to put them together, and then that's when you hire what we call an executive chef that can manage all those. You're like a producer. In the music, that's exactly right.
Either the composer or the producer in the studio that's trying to bring the best of everybody.
That's exactly right. That's what a director is, more or less. He really doesn't. I mean, I don't critique in the sense of I let the numbers speak for themselves. If you make financials and they're doing great, that's a great number. If your satisfaction scores are where you're supposed to be, and our hotel's usually 1 or 2 in everything. If you're in that realm. Just continue to do that. Now, do sometimes I have to tap on the board to get somebody's focus, attention? Yeah, that happens. But that happens in anything, any kind of business.
Right. We're human. That's great, man. How are you on time?
I'm good. Don't worry about me.
What are your top 5 desert island, either actual like wine brands or vineyards or varietals? You can get specific.
I mean, the varietals for me, I love Cabernet. I like the Bordeaux region of France. I love that wine. Right? Yeah. Ribera del Duero is very nice.
What's that
the
one?
Ribera del Duero is in Spain. The Rioja region in Spain is very good. Napa. If you get, I mean, they're just the complexities of wine and in the region. Barolo in Italy. Yeah. Wow, you go to Barolo, you're like, oh my God, I love this wine, right? Yeah. But again, you go to Italy and you drink a glass of Barolo in Italy, it's completely different than drinking that same bottle in your home.
Why is that?
Because the experience is a wow.
True. It's like nice outside. Usually,
you're within the Italian culture. Your senses are kicking in, right? It's so funny. It's true. That is the art of it. Is go, and that's why food is great, because you're going with people that make you feel good.
Right.
The food makes you feel good. The people make you feel good. The wine makes you feel good. You go home and you're like, I'm happy. I had a great experience.
It's like going on it's like either going on a mini vacation. So it's like so many times you find vacations are a way to kind of reset, right? And gain perspective. And when you go to these places, I fell in love with photography and got really into it just when we went to Dolcetto, which is in the north of Italy. And I just started seeing the beautiful sights, and my sister had a camera, started taking pictures. But had I not been on that trip and just had the camera here, it would have not been the same.
It would not have been the same.
And so having that like break from it's like a break from reality, right? You just and a lot of people probably get turned on to certain wines because not just because of the taste, like you said, it's the experience that comes with the taste. So it has this, smells. Which so it's 90% is smell, right?
That's
so
right.
when you think about our strongest sense of memory is in smells, right? When you can smell a cologne and make you think of your dad getting ready when you're a kid in the morning or whatever it is. Old Spice, yeah.
You can think of it right there.
So you have that sensory smell memory, and then you kind of take that smell for that wine with the best vacation you ever took. I don't care if somebody else thinks that wine tastes like crap. It's got that sentimental memory to you. It's gonna be your favorite wine.
It's funny you say that. There's a thing I always tell people. There's four 4 to 5 things I always tell our staff. You eat with your eyes automatically. When you walk in and you look at a restaurant, you're eating right away. That's your perception. Then the smell. If you walk into a nice Italian restaurant and you smell that nice garlic smell, you're already there.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the taste. You go and taste your food. Then the experience, and then the value paid. Right? These are the 5 things I tell people. If I go in and I order a hamburger and I pay $10, and then I get the same hamburger for $40, the value's gone. You see, the last one is the hard one.
Right.
The value of what I got is what dictates it. Now, if I go in and I get a Kobe burger, and in the bun was a brioche, and the lettuce was crisp tomato, and it had a foie gras.
A foie gras.
There you go. See, now
you're bringing it to the next level.
Like, okay, $35, I'm good. The experience, everything else went in order, right?
Have you had a foie gras on a burger before?
Of course. It's a heart attack waiting to happen.
No, I don't know. That sounds amazing.
It is amazing.
Where do you get that?
Well, usually I make them, but,
no
but
way.
you can. I think I saw that in Vegas. It was one of the Vegas restaurants where I got the idea from. But think about it for a second. That's what value is worth. Like if you go to a restaurant and you eat, steaks are everywhere in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Again, you walk in, the place looks elegant, the music is bumping, and it's got a good steak feel. Then the smell, you can smell the good smell of a steakhouse. And then your taste, you bite into that steak, it's got the right saltiness, it's got the right flavors, cooked to your perception. It all ties itself together, right?
Sure.
And then you're like, $75 for the steak. You're okay with it.
Yeah.
You're okay. Now, if any of that went wrong, you walked in and there was a sewer smell.
Yeah.
Because the sewer backed off, right? I'm just giving an example.
Or something with the service. Yeah.
You see how it happens?
Yeah.
The $75 not worth $75 no more.
Yeah.
And that's the art. The art of that part is how to make this also be part of the experience. When people say, well, I don't want to pay $100 for steak. Well, I paid $100. I paid $200, $300 for a bottle of wine. But when you open it and I go, wow, it's a wow. Now, when I open a $20 bottle of wine in Spain or a $10 bottle of wine in Spain, and I still go, wow, it's even great because your perception of what you're going to get, your value paid, is become a part of your senses.
Right.
That's what can kill or not kill your experience is when people think I'm going to overcharge you. Value paid is something that people always forget. Was this worth the money?
Right. It doesn't matter what the cost is. Do you feel like you got your money's worth?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And your money's worth is based on, from that point, number 5, the other way. Experience, flavor,
right,
scent, look, it all plays a role. So once you get that and everybody's aligned to that, and you have a team that thinks like that, then you start to become really, really good. And that's where I think some hotels excel, like ours excel very well in that aspect. We all have that mindset that this is an experience that we want people to enjoy. This is what we do. This is, if you come to my house to eat, I'm going to make you walk away happy. That's why I invited you, right? It's not like I'm going to feed you and let you go. No, I want you to have an experience. I want you to enjoy yourself. When we gather together and we bring this person or that person, we enjoy our company.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to.
Dude, I got to come back to that burger for a second. Hold on. So I'll tell you why. First of all, I've been carnivore pretty much for like for 90 days. So I'm eating a lot of meat. And I have foie gras in the fridge.
Just sear it.
So first of all, you got to get that in one of the restaurants. First of all, I guarantee you people would buy that.
Oh, I know they buy it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a higher cost.
Yeah.
And, I used to have it in one restaurant. I used to call it the heart attack burger, right? Because the chef would be like, can we put some nice demi on it? I'm like, oh, you do whatever you want. I mean, at the end of the day, you're the creative guy. My vision was to have a burger with foie gras.
Yeah.
And it does very well, but it is... this was back in California when they banned foie gras for a while too. On top of it, so,
I didn't know it was banned.
Yeah, sometimes they do silly things like that. They ban certain foods.
So wait, so Wagyu beef? You said Wagyu?
Yeah, I would chop up a Wagyu. Don't go to the very high because you're gonna
like you could do Texas Wagyu.
Texas Wagyu is fine. Yeah, you can do a Texas Wagyu, chop it up, put it together, and then just do the burger like normal, and then just put it right on top.
So instead of cheese, you put the foie gras basically, or cheese and foie gras.
I don't do the cheese. I just do the foie gras.
Yeah,
that's enough calories, and it'll kill you.
So
you do it on a steak, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever put it on a steak?
I've not. That sounds amazing.
Oh, yes.
I put butter on a steak, but not foie gras.
Oh, yes. You put that on top of a steak. So, and a filet on top? Oh, it's delicious.
On my birthday, because I was doing the carnivore, on my birthday, I was so strict with it that Carla made a cake. Everybody had cake. She brought me foie gras. Like, you know how it comes out of the mold?
Yeah.
on a plate with the candle in it.
That's
So
sick.
I love me some foie gras, but I've gotten really big into making my own smash burgers. I got a Blackstone grill, the flat griddle
you just
outside.
push it up.
So I've got the big thing on there, and like everybody that's come over, if they've come over for dinner as guests, I've been making them burgers, and they're all loving it. And so I want to have that experience. You got to come over. We got to do and put foie gras on it mixed with the smash burgers. That sounds amazing.
You see what just happened? How your emotions went up when you realized you can have it with foie gras. That's the experience we talk about. How to make experience and food and beverage make it an experience. Now you're like, I got to try this because you know it. You know you like foie gras.
Yeah.
You know you like a hamburger smash burger.
Yeah.
So now you can put them together and you're going to be like, and it's going to blow you. Like when I look at people and they have crudos, some people have never had a crudo.
Mm-hmm.
Like a tuna crudo or a salmon crudo or carpaccio. Some people have never had carpaccio, and you would never think of it, right? But until you experiment something new, and traveling does that. When you travel a lot, okay, I'll try this, I'll try that, and then you're like, oh my God, this is delicious. How come I never had this before? Yeah. It's like when your kids eat something for the first time. Like my kid had chili for the first time, and a couple of years ago, and his eyes just lit up, and you were like, now that's what happens when you taste different things, right? Because they're always like, I don't want to taste that.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
Seriously, man.
That's what you miss out.
That's a battle.
And now they love chili. American chili is a bomb. Yeah. Well,
it's chili season.
It is. It's about that time. Yeah. Although it's 90 degrees outside, so I don't know.
I know. Seriously, man.
Yeah.
Well, hell, man. I appreciate you coming.
No, thank you. Listen, I appreciate it. It's been great. And if anybody wants to get into food and beverage, just call me. I mean, I'm very open to always training and getting people. One thing I always tell people, most of the people that have worked for me are in a better position than I am right now. They have higher regional jobs than I do, right? And that's the greatest asset of being a person as you get older in life is that you look back and say, I knew that guy. I knew that guy when I have friends who own 20 restaurants. One guy owns 25 restaurants.
Oh.
One of them is a regional for a major hotel company. One is a restaurant chain group. So that's part of the experience of also food and beverage is that you make lifelong bonds because you're in the trenches, right? So you build that.
They're your brothers.
They're your brothers,
sisters,
and you want to see them succeed. And even when they leave, it's kind of hurtful, right? Like, I lost my buddy here, right? But then you see them growing and advancing. And that's the benefit of our business is that it builds relationship. I have friends all over the world. Yeah. And it's all hospitality.
And the bonus is you get to eat everywhere all the time.
That's
good
true.
food.
Good food, good wine. And even if the wine's not good, here's what I tell people. I've gone to places where you taste wines and you're like, okay, you're not there yet. But again, it's the experience. The wine may not be 100% ready, right? But you made it up with the company. You made it up with other people, right? So it's expectations of what was that beautiful wine Trader Joe had? It was called a $2 Chuck.
Never had it.
Oh, well, the $2 Chuck was famous, right? And I used to drink it, and people were like, why would you drink that? I go, listen.
Was it just a red? Or
it was a red $2 Chuck, a Cabernet. And I would say, people look at it and they recognize it, right? I'm going to just do it without, I'm going to change the bottle and put it somewhere else. After that, nobody even said a word. I'm like, see, it's all about the experience. The visual part, they ate with their eyes. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They looked at the bottle. They saw, I think it was Charles Shaw. I think they saw the bottle and they said, oh, yeah, I see that at Trader Joe's for like $5. Yeah. And these were people that maybe like to spend $50, $60 a bottle of wine. So the minute I had it decanted before they got there, right? And
nice crystal.
And it changed the whole perception of it. So that makes you realize that perception is part of the reality. And that's true. For sure. Perception is part of reality.
That's how Madame Clicquot made champagne famous.
That's exactly right. And here's a woman that at her time should not have been doing business. The father left all the business for the brother, and she ended up taking it all. Yeah. Earning it all. She earned it all. She didn't take it. She earned every part of that business.
To the Russian oligarchs and the wealthy with that beautiful orange label. She was a marketing whiz.
And it's funny because her dad, from what I understand, left everything to the brother. Because back then you leave it to the older son or something like that. You didn't give it to the daughters. And she took it all and said, you know what, I'm smarter than him. Good for her.
That's awesome.
Well, pleasure,
brother.
Thank you.